No, 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 no. No, no, no. You gotta be... It's locked. We just walked 2,500 feet to a gate. It's locked. You gotta go all the way back and up and over this thing.
Throughout the 1800s, being on the map almost certainly meant having a railroad station. By the 1850s, the only city in California or on the West Coast with a railroad stop was Sacramento, the first to get one. LA at that time had 50,000 people, San Diego less than 1,000. The cities were competing to be the first on the Pacific, and though Los Angeles had the size, San Diego had the port. John Spreckles, a San Diego tycoon, was the first to attempt to cut a rail line through the Carrizo mountain range to Yuma, through one of the most inhospitable regions ever attempted. In 1907, surveying began along the Laguna Mountain Range and through the Carrizo Valley. Competition between the cities was heightening. LA was dredging a harbor and telling newspapers that San Diego had burned completely to the ground a week prior, or that it had been overcome with a flea infestation. In 1909, grading began, and by 1914, the year the track was supposed to be finished, only 53 miles had been complete. After 6 years, only 60 miles were complete. It took until 1917 before the team even made it to the Carrizo Canyon, a stretch of 11 miles of the harshest terrain, the last 20 miles of the impossible railroad. Tunnel 8 was completed in 1919, over 2,500 feet that took over 2 years, 3.5 feet per day, and the railroad was set to open in its entirety. Though Spreckles missed the first 2 attempts at driving the last spike, the railroad was complete and set to open. After his 3rd attempt, drove it home.
Almost immediately after driving the final stake, the railroad encountered financial issues. John Spreckles leased the railroad out to Hollywood in order to make stunt films, of which you can see the wreckage behind me.
With the cave-in of one of the tunnels in the 1930s, the railroad elected to bypass this area instead of cutting a new tunnel. In doing so, they built the Trestle Bridge.
The trestle itself is over 750 feet long and in some places over 200 feet high. It's got a 14-inch curve in it to account for wind coming off of the canyon floor. They use as little metal as possible, with redwood trees being used as the timber.
The railroad carried passengers during the day and freight at night. In order to break even, the railroad required over 50 cars of freight moved each night, and at their peak they averaged about 11. Steam engines required water every 30 miles, which was an issue in the desert. In 1922, John Spreckles retired, and in 1926 he died. By 1933, his family had sold the railroad for 9 cents on the dollar. The last passenger train ran in 1951, and by 1970, cars and trucks in the interstate system had rendered the railroad completely obsolete. Today, the trestle is a common hiking destination for those who live in the Southern California area. From the nearest road, it's 5 to 6 miles from the north and 8 miles from the south. Though if you start from the south, your hike will begin at an RV camp where clothing is optional.